We saw how ng-include helps us in loading HTML partials to abstract our view code. And we have seen how we can create different states of our application using ng-include directive. We can achieve the same effect using ng-switch directive, but for smaller chunks of partials. I mean, if you have to conditionally swap smaller chunks of HTMLs using ng-switch is not at all a bad idea. This works very much similar to the switch statement we use in our day-to-day programming. So I have my basic HTML with module and controller code in place. I'll start by creating a list of state selection radio buttons first, which will help me swap HTML chunks based on state selected. So I'm gonna use a div to repeat using ng-repeat directive, which will repeat my channel data. Inside my div, I'll add an input element of type radio button with some name and channel as a value. Then I'm going to use ng-module directive and its value as data.whichChannel. So in this case, you can see I'm using object binding, which is required for this example to work. So I need to create this data object on my $scope object. Then I'm going to add ng-checked directive to mark the first radio button in checked state. Finally, channel as a label of the radio button. The code looks good. Let's run it and see. Great. So the first part of the UI is in place. Next part will be the partials to be displayed based on the state selected above. So I'm pasting those partials to save some time. Now I'm going to have this divs to swap based on my channel value selected over here. Next, on this parent div, I'm going to add ng-switch directive and on directive, which is part of ng-switch directive. This on directive will contain an expression like our switch statement that will be evaluated to decide which child region of the div will be displayed. So I'm going to give it a value of data.whichChannel. So based on the value of this property, it's going to show respective channel divs. Next, I'll use ng-switch when and give it a value of star TV so that when star TV option will be selected from the radio buttons, this will display this div and other divs will be removed. Similarly, I will associate the second div with say star world option. And finally, I will use ng-switch default directive to specify content that should be displayed when none of the ng-switch when sections matches above. Looks simple and very much similar to switch statement, right? So let's refresh the application. You can see as none is selected, it's showing the default div. Now, if I select other option, awesome, divs are getting swapped based on the channel value. Now let's open the elements panel. You can see it's showing only one div element based on channel value and other div elements are removed from the DOM. Now you might have observed ng-include and ng-switch directives looks very much similar to each other. So the question is which to use when, right? I believe you can use ng-switch for simple and smaller content. Use ng-include if the contents are complex and big to improve performance. As in case of ng-include, contents are loaded using AJAX request. There is a possibility of lag in content rendering if the contents are not available. If still confused, you can start with ng-switch and later replace it with ng-include if the contents are getting bigger and complex.